let's take and write an equation in ellipse form. Now remember, ellipse form, all your x's and y's are on the left side and equal to 1. So that's really important. So we want everything with a variable on the left, and we'll group our x's together and our y's together, and then the constant on the right, and then we'll figure out what to do to make everything the way it's supposed to be. Okay, so this is on the left. We're good to go there. But this, and this all need to move to the right, and this needs to move to the left. So I'm going to add 2x squared to both sides. That gives me 2x squared. I'm going to add 8x to both sides. That gives me plus 8x. Now I'm going to add y squared to both sides, plus y squared. And then the minus 16y is where it's supposed to be. And then I'm going to go ahead and subtract 52 from both sides. It gives me negative 52. Okay, so now what I want to do is, I already made sure I had everything grouped together. We're going to have to complete the square so that we can solve for the ellipse. When you complete the square, the leading term, the x squared or the y squared, has to have a coefficient of 1. That means we don't want to see a number there. So if there's a number there, what we're going to do is we're going to divide it out. We're going to factor it out. So I'm going to factor out a 2. And when I factor out a 2, I get x squared plus 4x plus something, because I'm going to complete the square there, plus, this one's good to go. There's not a coefficient that I need to divide off. So y squared minus 16y plus something to complete the square equals negative 52 plus something plus something. Okay, the reason why I said plus something is I have this here and this here. It's a balanced scale. A balanced scale means whatever I do on the left side, if I'm adding or subtracting just random stuff, I have to add or subtract it from the right side also, or it's no longer balanced. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is whatever I put here, I'm not going to just come over here and add it there. Whatever I put here, I have to multiply by this term outside the parentheses, or this coefficient outside the parentheses, and then add it over there. So let's complete the square. To complete the square, we take half the middle, which is 2. Half of 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. So I'm going to go 4 times 2 is 8, and I'm adding 8 to this side because whatever I add on this side, I have to add on this side. And the reason why it's 8 is because it's 2 times 4. This 2 is going to, if I were to multiply that 2 back in, I get 2x squared plus 8x plus 8. Okay? So I have to make sure that I multiply that to that coefficient and then add it. All right, let's complete the square with the y. Half of 16. Half of 16 is 8. 8 squared is 64. Okay, so I'm going to factor this and group it together so that I can have my perfect squares. So this would become 2x plus 2 squared plus this becomes y minus 8 squared equals, that's going to be 20. All right, we're almost there. We do not want this to be 20. We want our constant to be a 1. So if I need that to be a 1, I can make any number 1 by dividing it by itself, by whatever it is. Since this is 20, I can go through and divide everything by 20. To keep my scale balance, I have to divide them all by 20. So this, and this divides by 20. And now look, 20 divided by 20 is 1. I need to reduce this fraction, so it becomes x plus 2 squared over 10. I need to reduce this fraction, which it doesn't, so it's just going to be y minus 8 squared over 20. Whew. Okay, so now this is the equation. From that equation, I can determine the center, the length of the major axis, the length of the minor axis. I'll have to find C and my foci. And remember, we want to, for everything besides the center, we need to know where my major axis is, and it's always where the bigger denominator. Here's my bigger denominator. 20 is bigger than 10. It's with my y. Since it's with my y, this is an elongated, it's long vertically. So let's start with our h and our k, because the center is hk. H is always the number being subtracted from x. So h is -2. K is what's being subtracted from y. So k is 8. So my center is -2, 8. The length of my major axis is 2a. A is the square root of the bigger denominator. So A is the square root of 20, which is 2 square roots of 5. So 2A would be 2 times 2 square roots of 5, which is 4 square roots of 5. My minor axis is 2 times B. B is the square root of the smaller denominator, so B is the square root of 10. And that doesn't break down any further. So 2 times the square root of 10 is 2 square roots of 10. To find C, I'm going to use the formula. C squared equals A squared minus B squared. So C squared is my bigger denominator, which is 20, minus my smaller denominator, which is 10. So C squared equals 10. So C equals the square root of 10. Okay. All right, so my foci, remember it is on my major axis. Where's my major axis? My major axis is with the y, with the k. It's affecting my k because that's where my major axis is. So I'm going to add and subtract C from my k. And why did I choose K? Because that is where my major axis is with my y, and this is my y value of the center. So my foci is going to be -2, and then 8 plus and minus the square root of 10. Okay, let's practice another one where we have to write this in the ellipse form. Remember, I want to group my x's together and my y's together all on the left side. Then I want my constant on the right, and I'm going to want my constant to be 1 when it's all said and done. So I've got my x's, and they're already on the left side, so I want to group them together. So that would be 4x squared plus 16x. And then I want to group my y's together. So that's plus 5y squared plus 10y. I want this minus 79. I don't want it there. So I'm going to add 79 to both sides, and that gives me positive 79. Now, I'm going to go ahead and complete the square. But in order to complete the square, remember we have to divide out these leading coefficients out of each group. So I'm going to divide out the 4 here. So I get 4x squared plus 4x plus something to complete the square. Plus, now I'm going to divide out the 5, or factor out the 5. So when I factor out the 5, I get y squared plus 2y plus something to complete the square with the y equals 79 plus something, because this is what came from my x parentheses, times 4. This was my y parentheses times 5. So make sure you don't forget that step. Okay, complete the square. Half the middle. Half of 4 is 2. Squared is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. Here, half of 2 is 1. 1 squared is 1. 1 times 5 is 5. So let's rewrite these. 4, and then this would be x plus 2 squared plus 5y plus 1 squared equals 100. to be 100. We want this to be 1. So like I told you before, the easy thing to do is we're going to go through and divide everything by whatever this is. So I'm going to divide this by 100, this term by 100, and this term by 100, and I'm going to reduce it. So this reduces to be x plus 2 squared over 25. And this reduces to be y plus 1 squared over 20 equals 1. And there's our equation. There's our equation. So now I want to determine my center, my length of major axis, length of minor axis, my C, so I can figure out my foci. And then one of the things that I need to know is what direction is this going off of my major axis. Well, here's my major axis right here because 25 is bigger than 20. Okay, so it's going with the x. So that means it's going horizontally because that's the direction the x-axis is going. X goes this way. Okay, so h is always the number being added or subtracted from the x. So -2 is being subtracted from the x, not added or subtracted, subtracted. K is the number being subtracted from the y, so it is -1. So my center is -2, -1. Alright, my length of my major axis is going to be 2a. And a is the square root of the bigger denominator, so a is 5. Because the square root of 25 is 5. So 2 times 5 is 10. So the length of my major axis is 10. The length of my minor axis is 2b. b is the square root of the smaller denominator. So b is 2 square roots of 5, because the square root of 20 is 2 square roots of 5. 2 times 2 square roots of 5 is 4 square roots of 5. Okay, c can be found by using the formula c squared equals a squared, which is 25, minus b squared, which is 20. So c squared equals 5, so c equals the square root of 5. The reason why I need to know that is it is the distance on my major axis from the center on the left and the right, or up and down, depending on where my major axis is. Where's my major axis? My major axis is right here, so along the x. So it's the c is affecting that -2. That's who's getting added and subtracted. That's where it's getting added and subtracted, the c. So it's going to be -2 plus or minus the square root of 5 and -1.